It is now my pleasure to introduce engineering alumnus Gary Wendlandt. Mr. Wendlandt is a 1972 graduate with a degree in applied mathematics and computer science, which led him to his first job as an actuary. From there, Mr. Wendlandt put his problem-solving skills to use as he pivoted to the world of investment management and led a distinguished career in investments and insurance. In 2010, he retired as chairman of New York Life Investment Management. He and his wife, Peg, are enjoying retirement to the fullest, and we are honored that Gary is able to join us this evening. For a number of years, Gary and Peg have supported student scholarships in the School of Engineering. Nearly 10 Wendlandt scholars have received scholarship support through their generosity. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Gary Wendlandt.
Thank you, Harold. I thought he was going to give my whole bio, in which case my speech would be a bit difficult. But in any case, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and then we're going to talk a little bit about you. I attended public schools in Milwaukee, what today would be called the inner city of Milwaukee. I actually went to the same high school as my mother went to. I never thought of it back then, but it was a neighborhood of immigrants. Probably about 1/3 of the kids that I went to school with didn't speak English at home. There were good students and bad students. There were good teachers and some that weren't so good. But I learned early on that in many respects you get out of it what you put into it. I love to learn, and so I did. Now, we didn't have much money, and it would have been very logical for me to attend the University of Wisconsin in Madison. But in the 1960s, during the Vietnam War, there was more activism going on in Madison than education. Thankfully, we had a bit of an introduction to Washington University because the Army had sent my father to WashU back during World War II to train him to work on what we now know was the Manhattan Project, the project that built the atomic bomb that ended World War II. So I applied to WashU, and the tuition at the time was $1,900. Dean McKelvey would remember that. It was $1,800 if you went to the Arts and Sciences School, but it was $1,900 for engineers. In any case, I couldn't have afforded that. My parents couldn't have afforded that. But through the combination of a loan and a scholarship, I was able to attend Washington University. And WashU was a wonderful place for me. The professors loved what they did, and it was infectious. I remember in particular one professor, Gustav Mesmer. He was an immigrant from Germany, I think, and his specialty was designing helicopters. But what he taught was Mechanics 101. And he so loved this subject that I fell in love with it too. One of his principles was to teach people about the margin of safety, which is absolutely essential, of course, if you're building helicopters. And it was pretty important in Mechanics 101 too, because we were talking about building bridges. As it turns out, however, this is a concept that has served me well, not just in general, but even in the investment world, where I ultimately ended up. Because in the investment world, a lot of people spend more time on emotions and less time on rational thought. And the margin of safety principle taught me a way of approaching the investment world. So with my engineering degree in applied math and computer science, I headed off to MassMutual, Massachusetts Mutual Life Insurance Company. As it turned out, my college roommate's father worked for this company, He said this company would be a good match for me, and he thought it was a great company. I didn't know it then, but MassMutual was a mutual company, which meant that it worked only for its policyholders. It had no shareholders. It had no stock options, but it had no shareholders. And it turns out that's a wonderful thing for an insurance company to be a mutual company, because it allows you to take a long-term perspective, and the long-term perspective is very important in the life insurance business, where a customer may very well work with the company for an entire career. The only other company I ever worked for was New York Life, which is also a mutual company. Now, people may wonder about the choice of my becoming an actuary. The issue here, of course, is that if you understand what an actuary is, I've often described them as the financial engineers of insurance companies. They really learn more about the inside and out of how an insurance company operates and get involved in all of the key decisions that are involved in running an insurance company and making it successful. And so it was very logical for me to end up as an actuary working for an insurance company, because I was using the same basic skills that I learned back at Washington University: rational thought and careful thinking. In 1979, I moved into the investment area at MassMutual to help the company face what at the time was 20+% interest rates. Remember that? It seems unlikely at this point. But that was a new challenge for insurance companies and for actuaries at the time. Never before had an actuary actually worked for the investment department of an insurance company. This created a new specialty within the actuarial profession, and I spent the rest of my career as an investment manager rather than an actuary, while always maintaining my focus as a problem-solving engineer with a focus on the margin of safety. So that's my story. Yours is yet to be written. But I look upon all of our students with hope and excitement. You would hardly believe the rudimentary things we called computers back in my day. And you'd also hardly believe the trivial things we call problems. It falls on your generation to identify, analyze, and solve the problems we now face, which are much more daunting, but that I know you have the talent and the training to be equal to this task. Upon graduation, you need to and you will get on with your lives, and great things await you. But don't lose sight of how you got here and how fortunate we all are to live in this great country and to have the benefits of a great education. I didn't mention it before, but I'm also a Boy Scout. I have been one for 58 years. When we come to a campsite for the first time, the saying is, leave it better than you found it. Today's parlance probably says, pay it forward. This thought has been very powerful. The best way I know how to leave Washington University better than I found it, which was pretty good, by the way, is by creating more and better alumni who have the education that might otherwise have been impossible. The best way I know how to leave the world a better place is by educating people and contributing to solving the problems that we now face. You make me proud to be able to contribute to this effort in a small way. Thank you.